Mr. Chairman, we are live.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. We'll wait for our secretary to get back. We'll call a meeting to order, and first order of business is to take roll.
Representative Andrew.
Here.
Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Connolly.
Here.
Representative Harshman.
Here.
Representative Nyman.
Here.
Representative Newsom. Representative Obermueller. Representative Summers.
Yep.
Chairman Paxton.
Here, let me remind the committee that we're getting behind in our schedule, and I have a rather ambitious goal for us today in that I've listed 4 bills, and I certainly would like to be able to cover those. So again, I should not say brevity is appreciated because that doesn't seem to work, but brevity is appreciated. And we're going to resume where we left off on House Bill 165. I think we'll take one more testimony that we did not get to the other day. And so, Dr. Caldwell, if you're on board, we'll take you first.
Mr. Chairman, this is, and members of the committee, this is Dr. Sandy Caldwell, Executive Director of the Wyoming Community College Commission. And I heard you. I will have brevity in what I share with you today. And I do have, in case we have any questions, our CFO with us, Mr. Larry Buchholz, to answer a few things. I did provide for each of you an overview from the Educational Attainment Executive Council. This information does fit within the Attainment Council, and actually something that I wanted to share with you is that this bill actually harkens back to many studies that the legislature has done over the years, and Representative Harshman on the Wyoming's Tomorrow Task Force is well aware of this, and he's familiar with it. And I can actually think back to whenever I worked with or worked for Senator Tex Boggs back when Hathaway was just brought forward. It was in the Blue Ribbon panel. This concept was in the 2009 task force, the 2010 statewide college system strategic plan. It is in the adopted attainment plan, and it is in the commission's newly adopted 2021 statewide college system strategic plan. I don't want to repeat anything that the good Dr. Schaefer, president of Laramie County Community College, shared, because he really did a fantastic job of sharing the impacts from the proof of concept with Rediscover LCCC. However, I do want to share with you that that I can direct you to the NCSL, where they actually have multiple states that have successfully implemented these types of programs, specifically related to closing the equity gaps, where we see a higher disproportionate completion. They do have validated research on this from both the Lumina Foundation and Strata. So very substantial. I also want to also bring forward what happened with the CARES grants that were deployed last fall. The adult grant and the college grant, which focused not on tuition and fees, but actually on the total cost of attendance, had a dramatic impact in the enrollment that we saw at the community colleges and at the university. And that went from a drop of 20% going into it to an overall drop of about 8% at the community colleges. So very substantial. And we are seeing some retention in those. To keep it brief, I have provided you, I did send that on Sunday night, a list of potential amendments that I just wanted to bring to your attention for your consideration. I do want to mention that I missed one in there for your consideration. I'm happy to talk about any one of these, but I also know that you have limited time and many bills. I do want to just mention for your consideration, I did not include one that it really is going to depend on what you want to do and the funding that is available. And that would be page 7, line 4. It specifically lists that eligibility says that someone cannot have completed, has not earned a degree. I just wanted to mention the potential for putting in the word baccalaureate degree. Within the attainment plan, we do have associate level completion and sub-associate for certificates, but we have identified that our state also needs a higher level at bachelor's degrees in order to stimulate and grow new economy. So I wanted to mention that one. It is laid out in the attainment plan, and whether or not you choose to do that, of course, is your purview, but I wanted to mention that. I'm happy to talk about any of these. On the number 2 amendment that I suggested, page 2, lines 9 and 10, we see another bill that is up that is actually on the list that we have, that rather than inserting all of that language, referenced what is already in current statutes. And this is to accommodate the various starting points and dates for all the colleges and their programs and the non-traditional start dates, and it makes it a little bit simpler. That reference, if you would rather use that than all of that language, would be statute 21-18-402, section A, Romanet I. And with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, in my attempt to have brevity, I will stop, and I'm happy to answer any questions, as is Mr. Buchholz.
We do appreciate your brevity. And are there any questions for the good doctor from the committee? Seeing no questions.
Can I just,
Representative Harshman, do
Mr.
you want to
Chairman,
weigh in here?
Dr. Caldwell, appreciate all your suggestions. And I think, just so you know, the committee will probably look at these as committee of the whole amendments, just to save a little time today in the committee. So we really appreciate your input and keep it coming. So we want the processes to make it better, right? And so
That's
we
right.
appreciate all your help. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I'm not sure whether we have anyone else that would like to testify. If there's someone in the room that we omitted last time that would like to testify, you can go ahead right now, please. Come forward and introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent. And as always, brevity is appreciated.
My name is Walt Tribely, and I'm the president of the Northern Wyoming Community College District. I'm here speaking in support of this bill, echoing the comments you've heard from our executive director and certainly Dr. Schaefer. Just real quickly, this is one of the best ways we can really quickly intervene with the number of jobs that we're losing in my area, certainly up in the northeastern part of the state, with the loss of jobs in the mineral extraction industry. This provides a resource for those students to retrain themselves, reskill, get back on the job, start paying taxes again, and start buying things. It's really a needed program. With over 100,000 of our Wyoming adults with only a high school degree, another approximately 100,000 with some college, this is a really needed bill for those those non-traditional students, so over 25 or so typically. But thank you for bringing this bill forward. I do urge your support.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Summers? Oh, Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, we do have some online testimony. I apologize. Would you like me to admit those folks
No.
to the room?
I think we have really covered this subject pretty well, and we have a lot of territory to cover today. So unless it's just something very critical that we haven't heard before, and we've had a lot of support. I guess if we have someone out there in the on the virtual world that has opposition to the bill, we probably ought to hear the opposition. But outside of that, if you're in favor of the bill, I think we'll stop there with that. But if you're in opposition to the bill, we will let someone comment on the opposition. So if they're opposed, bring them in. If not, I think we better proceed.
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone who has their hand raised as of right now.
Okay, then I think we'll go ahead. We had a motion from Representative Summers. I don't know if we had a second yet. Representative Conley has seconded the bill. Do you want to walk through this bill page by page, committee, or should we? What's your pleasure? Ordinarily, we walk through it page by page, but I think we've vetted it pretty well. So, yeah, Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think this bill is perfect, but what does the good former speaker say? You don't make the perfect be the enemy of the good. I do think it's a good bill. I think it's an approach that needs to be taken to try to lift up those non-traditional students. I think we'll find out in time how these funds balance out and how it works and how well it works, but we'll find that out. So I think it's a worthy effort, Mr. Chairman, on in support of the bill.
Okay, other members of the committee? Yes, Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I too am in favor of the bill and had served on the committee, and a real shout out to that committee with its both public and private partnerships to come together on an agreement here. I have a couple of amendments that I'd like to bring, but I'll do it committee of the whole. I think we should just move this along. Thank you.
Okay, I think that would help us out. Anyone else from the committee? Yes, Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to draw your attention to two handouts. Pictures worth 1,000 words, this case maybe 5,000. First, I'd like to start with the Hathaway diagram out of your data book.
Okay, go ahead.
That should be on your desk. And really, this is page 1920 of the bill. Part of this bill also increases the reserve amount. I briefly spoke about that at our last meeting. And you can see where I wrote off to the right-hand side what that does to the reserve account. And so currently it is full. It's 26 million in that account. And that's at that 4.5% of the average market value. This would increase it to 9%. And this is really what we're trying to do in all our permanent funds. And I think it's what good Representative Brown talked about. There's this talk like, isn't this fund in trouble? And really it's about this reserve account and the timing of the expenditures. And I mentioned that these payments go out in August, half the payments, and that year's investment income has not been credited yet. So it draws down this reserve account and people say, hey, it looks like we're in trouble. And so that's part of that. And then the other part, as you know, Craig does not forecast capital gains, just interest and dividend. And so when you look out at all of our Craig forecasts at years 4, 5, and 6, they show these deficits because Craig forecasts only 2.64%. And so having a bigger reserve account also then shows really the real state of where we're at on this. And it's not a situation that automatically keeps curing itself when we get closer to that date. And so that's part of the reason to do that as well. Mr. Chairman, and then the second handout, really, I'd like you to I added on the backside of this page, really Hathaway history. And I circled up 2009 as and these were school foundation program dollars. We took K-12 school money and we built the Hathaway, we built the higher education endowment, and we built school Capcom, $2 billion worth. We took $2 billion of precious K-12 school foundation money, $2 billion, and built this, higher ed, and school facilities. So you can see that deposits, and then you can just see the average returns, and you can see in column 6, those deposits that have grown this account. And then as of December 31st, the latest treasurer, I wrote below that is 648 million. And then, Mr. Chairman, over to the right, I put the 548 with 100 million reduction. And then, Mr. Chairman, back to the front page, and I wrote some more on there for you and redistributed. This is just a copy of what I distributed to you the other day. And I drew a line and wrote Craig above and then what's actually happened. And really, even if and I probably should have wrote this on yours, but if you go to column 7 and down to the very bottom, 548 million in the Hathaway account, after we move 100 million out, And at the 5% yield, it's 27 million. Our spend on the Hathaway is about 18, 19 million a year. And so you can see that extra amount. And you say, well, what if we don't get 5%? Good question. So Craig forecast is 2.64. That's about 16 million. We'd have to flow 2 million back if we don't get anything but dividends and interest. So really what the account needs to make at that 548 million is about 3.5%. I mean, if we can't make another percent above our dividends and interest, we're doing something wrong, right? We got to, and so, so that's that part. And then it's going to grow a 9% reserve fund. And so even if you had zero returns, you know, you have multiple years, 3-4 years, and you'll be able to see what's coming and legislature will be able to react. So that's really the dollars. And I think that'll be a challenge people really want to understand when we get to the floor. So I just wanted to spend a little time and talk about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just briefly, I do have concerns about this, but we have dealt with similar concerns in similar circumstances through my whole tenure here. It's what we do. We come in and we tweak and we fix, and we'll figure this out over time. So on and support.
Oh,
Just let's go.
okay. Anyone else on the committee?
Question on the bill.
Question on the bill. So let's take our vote, please.
Okay, Representative Andrew?
Aye.
Representative Brown?
No.
Representative Connolly? Representative Harshman? Representative Nyman?
Aye.
Representative Newsome is not here. Representative Obermuller? Representative Summers? Chairman Paxton? That's 7 ayes, 1 no, and do I mark her excused? Representative Newsome? Okay. I guess as I do.
Okay, and I'm assuming that you, Representative Harshman, will present this bill on the floor. Is that correct?
Along with the majority floor leader and minority floor leader.
Okay, a little help from your friends. Call a friend. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go
Did
ahead.
this bill pass regularly or with amendments?
No amendments.
No amendments?
No, not yet anyway.
Okay, thank
They-
you.
But stay tuned, amendments to come. All right, the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 154. Representative Summers, and I would appreciate it if you kind of tell us what problem you're trying to solve here and how this particular bill solves that problem.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring you House Bill 154, School Finance School District Reserves, and ask for your favorable consideration. And actually, this bill was brought to me by the agency that deals with education in the state of Wyoming. And there's two things going on right now. One is there's potential out there for cuts to districts in K-12 education. And we also have the potential of receiving fairly substantial amounts of federal dollars through the next version of a federal stimulus package or a recovery package. And what happens with either one of them, if you have cuts coming on and you're a district, you may want to take some extra reserves and then use that money to flow out those reductions over time. Likewise, if you get a whole bunch of largesse money from the federal government and you can't hold it in your reserves, then you got to spend it in a year. And so the idea here is to, not knowing how the guidance on all that will turn out, maybe they won't have to worry about that, but right now I don't think we know. And so the idea behind this bill is to raise that reserve limit. And what this bill does is it raises the reserve limit from 15 to 25% for 3 years. And then it drops down to 20% for the next 2 years. So altogether, there's 5 years, 3 years at 25%, 2 years at 20%. The first 3 years, you can't spend any of the money on CapCon. And it's a similar discussion that we've had in House bill, in other bills we've had. The reason I'm running this is because if our 173 bill fails, I don't want this idea to be lost. So, Mr. Chairman, that's basically the bill.
Okay, thank you. I see Senator Cost sitting in the back of the room, and I see that he's a co-sponsor. So Senator Cost, I would like to invite you up to make any comments that you might have on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's some things that we can do that can help out the schools during the hard times. And this is one of those really good things, because if the COVID money that's going to be coming to our state, it allows our schools to be able to spend that to offset their general fund money, then they're going to have a little extra. For most of us, we should probably think, well, if there's no money as far as normal, how are they going to have money in their general fund to be able to put away? But with the COVID, it gives them that ability to maybe set some of that money aside. And then the attrition through people retiring and all of the moving on or whatever, it gives these people, the districts, the opportunity to have some flexibility in that until we get down where they're trying to get with their decisions. So rather than just saying, okay, we got to fire people, we're going to have to just terminate this or that or do away with this. This gives them the opportunity through this time period to be able to work that out without the sacrifice of our people. I just think it makes really good sense. I applaud Representative Summers for doing this, and I'm in support of it. I would entertain any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions from the committee for either one of our presenters? Okay, with that, I think we will see if, before we open this up to public comment, we'll see if one of the agencies of State Department of Education or another agency is out there and would like to comment. So Clarissa, do we have anyone from the State Department of Education on board?
Mr. Chairman, Carrie Eakins has raised her hand. I can admit her to the meeting.
Okay, that would be good. You can bring her on, please. Welcome, Kari. Go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Hello.
I'm Kari Aikens, Chief Policy Officer at the Wyoming Department of Education, and want to let you know that the superintendent does support this bill because it specifically addresses this unique time and only allows this increase in reserves for the limited time stipulated in the bill. As mentioned, there have been federal dollars made available to schools. So far, Congress has already passed 2 COVID relief bills, and a third one is very near to the finish line that makes this situation unique with both, the funds that they have already received, the additional funds they are likely to receive, and the decline in state funds. This change to up the reserve account would really ensure that school districts are able to spend down those federal funds and not feel as rushed to spend down state funds when they may have federal funds available for some of those expenses for this limited time. Of course, schools will have to abide by the use those funds appropriately that are received at the federal level, but we believe that they could do so and use those funds and focus on spending down those federal funds instead of the state at this time, if that makes sense, Mr. Chairman. With that, I'm happy to stand for any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, thank you, Kari. Any questions from the committee for Kari this time? Yes, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kari, briefly, and I mean briefly because I know there's a lot of menagerie here, but what are some of the stipulations for the COVID CARES funds that are going to the school districts? I'm just kind of curious. I have not been able to catch up on that.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, really the main stipulation is that it has to be part of addressing the effects that COVID had on the school district. So of course, some of the obvious uses of these expenses are for custodial janitorial services, making sure that the schools are safe. Any additional supplies that they may need there. Also, any instructional needs from the disruption that occurred last spring when students were kept out of school buildings. They can use these funds to pay for teachers to help make sure that students are up to speed after that educational disruption. Even though we've done a great job this year having a lot of students in school, we still do have a percentage that have been participating virtually or in hybrid formats. And so schools can use these funds to pay salaries for tutors. There's a lot of things they could use them for. And I know we have some representatives here from associations that can speak to some of those potential uses, but mainly it's just that they have to use them as part of COVID relief. Importantly, they're typically federal funds come with a requirement that they can supplement but not supplant state funds. These COVID relief dollars do not have that requirement. They can supplant state funds with these federal COVID relief dollars.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for Kari? I don't see anyone else. Thank you, Kari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have anyone else from a state agency that would like to comment at this time? If not, we'll open it up to a public comment. Is there anyone in the room that would like to comment on this particular bill? Yes, please come forward and identify yourself. Tell us who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jed Cicarelli, Finance Director for Laramie County School District 1. Mr. Chairman, I understand you have a lot to cover, so I'll do my best to be brief. Knowing that cash reserves are largely a policy decision, from a kind of a pragmatic standpoint, cash reserves are a very important fiscal management tool for not only school districts, but most local governments. I would tell you that the cash reserve requirements in statute are really based on a number of nuances that I won't get into here today because of the limited nature of time that we have. But I would tell you that it really represents a snapshot in time of what a school board has as an unobligated fund balance. It's not only important for the cash flowing that we've talked about before, but it's also an important tool as we mitigate the potential impacts of budget reductions going forward. To provide a little perspective, our district last spring, when we knew that we were going to be impacted negatively by COVID-19 and the possibility of large budget reductions, we asked our budget officers in our district to conserve resources. We wanted to push our reserve limit as close as we could to the 15% so we could maintain a steady decrease into what would potentially be a pretty significant reduction in revenue going forward. Mr. Chairman, with that, and just to put a little bit more in perspective, that 15% for our district represents roughly 6 to 8 weeks of operating costs. So it's not a significant amount when you're looking at a school district that has a $213 million operating budget. Mr. Chairman, just a couple of other comments with regards to that. Knowing that it was our intention is to make sure that we have a sound fiscal plan moving forward. The 25% limit would provide a lot of relief as we navigate the next few years. I would tell you that even though we do have a significant amount of CARES money that potentially could be awarded to school district, it's time limited. It's emergency aid. And we at our district are very adamant that that's how we're going to approach those funds. It's true that there are not any supplement versus supplant requirements on these funds. But however, if we use these revenues to backfill in our general fund operating obligations and expenses, what that means is we're prolonging budget cuts. At some point in time, that emergency aid will go away and we will have to address it appropriately. So what this would do for us with a higher reserve limit would allow us to navigate those changes and be more pragmatic about how we approach that, develop a cash reserve policy plan along with the potential budget reductions over a long-term term of about 5 years. And Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to address any questions as well.
Okay, thank you. Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And, I drafted the bill really quickly and I put in, some provisions just for options. So one thing I did was 25% for 3 years, 20% for 2 years. Is that good enough? I mean, I'm happy 25 for for the whole 5 years, but I did put it in there that way just to kind of shave it down. What's your thoughts on that provision?
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Summers, I believe 25% would allow us the flexibility. I would tell you that the last 2 years in the proposed draft of 20%, the possibility of having 25% would help the funds that are awarded to school district potentially, and to maybe reference back to Chief Egan's comments earlier, school districts have received the first allocation of CARES money. We have not received the second, or obviously the one that's pending with the federal government now. A lot of those funds are authorized for use through September of 2023, and allowing us to have a little bit more flexibility through the full 5 years of 25% would be ideal.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the committee? Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Please come forward. Identify yourself. Tell us who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association, would also like to add our voice in support of this bill. I think there's oftentimes a myth that school districts are sitting on pockets of cash, that there's all kinds of money out there somewhere. The operating reserves that are allowed under state law are capped right now at 15%. We've heard from some of our business managers around the state that they get dinged in their audits, their annual audits, because GAAP, the accounting practices are to have a 3-month carryover ability to operate. And of course, you just heard from Mr. Cicarelli, you don't really see that in the 15% reserve. So that's exactly what it works for some of our school districts. The cash flow in from the state and from the counties happens at certain times. So particularly over the summer months, that reserve certainly helps for that. So while that money is, for some districts, really just taken up as an operational placeholder. And by the way, the statewide average is really somewhere just over 11%, between 11 and 12%. So most of the districts are really using their reserves for that purpose, to manage cash flow, to deal with certain instances where they have a need for money. That means that these new federal dollars are going to create this space where something else is needed. And to manage those federal dollars it can be quite the challenge. I was on a phone call with my peers from around the country on Monday, and I asked them, I said, so who among you has received your CARES $2 yet? And Washington was the only state that said that they have begun the deployment of CARES $2. So those are delayed a little bit. Part of that delay is the change in administrations with Dr. Cardona now at the Department of Education. There will be some additional guidance on that. And then through the state, typically states are requiring applications before those dollars get to school districts. So it just takes time. And that time that's backed up and that need for the funding really will allow the school districts to utilize those federal dollars to address the needs of the impact of learning loss from the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Farmer. Yes, Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Farmer, I think, is a former school board trustee, right?
That's correct.
Not currently. And then I think for Mr. Cicarelli, maybe Chief Eakins too, but you know, there was recently even an editorial by a former school board member went statewide about the way to solve this is, you know, make school districts spend their savings that they have. And so I think it's really important, I think, for us to really be educated so we can educate the body when these come up. This 15%, it's really about a cash flow. It's not like you get all the money right away. I mean, you have bills to pay every month, every week of the year. And when the cash comes from the state for those states, and even from property taxes, maybe just a real quick primer, elementary school level for us. Just and maybe Ms. Cicarelli can help on that, but you know, a minute or two, just that primer of timing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Harshman, I would say the first point is that most of us see the world from the blinders of our own perspective, our own world that we live within. So some individual who may feel that there are pockets of cash out there, perhaps might see that within their own experience, not realizing that in their district, they use those funds differently. So that is to say that school districts across the state utilize the funds differently. I will give you an example of Lincoln County School District number 1 as a district that does use the reserve for cash flow management purposes. That's a district that says, hey, you know what? When the dollars are coming into us, we need to use those dollars, particularly in the summertime, to pay payroll. Teachers make their money in the time of the school year. That's when they're working, but the contract's spread out over 12 months. So you're still seeing those paychecks distributed. You're still seeing that cash flow going out. And the school district has to make payroll. It has to pay all of the staff, has to pay all of the bills. And in some districts, the money coming in really is not enough to cover that basic cash flow. And so that's exactly what the reserve does. Now, our municipalities, our counties, they don't have caps on their cash flow. Some of them have very large assets, and those other local governments are able to do things with their investments that school districts can't, because that is oftentimes recognized as the state's money, the school foundation being state dollars. It's really just a management tool for how do we manage the resource entrusted to the district in order to pay for things. Now, again, the experience from district to district can and is different. Some districts rely on those reserves less so. I think there are different business practices. And so for them, that becomes then kind of the insulation for future ideas or future projects. I think, they've done things like if you're going to buy band uniforms or you're going to buy textbooks, sometimes there's efficiencies by doing that at certain periods of time. So you hold on to that money until you're going to make large or efficient purchases. And then that actually is better in the overall cash management practice of the district. So I will just say that it's really very different from district to district, but the practices are, how do we utilize that to manage the regular purchases, the regular financial obligations of the district?
Thank you. Representative Summers, you have a follow-up?
Mr. Chairman, just a kind of a comment back on the question, and I think Brian can confirm this. So in kind of the energy dependent counties like mine, you get NOVCs, which is notice of valuation changes. And if you get significantly lower valuation changes, it can be millions of dollars. And eventually that's paid back, by law, it's paid back to districts, but it's not in the right schedule. And so these reserves really help even out those NOVCs. Isn't that true?
Mr. Chairman, that is true. And certainly our mineral counties are the ones that have seen that. That's not hypothetical. Those actually do happen and have impacted districts.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
There may be a question from Majority Floor Leader. I know appropriations, we've actually changed the way we make payments, and we've kind of smoothed that out a little bit for our own cash flow as a state. I don't know. Could I ask Mr. Cicarelli to kind of, when do you get those payments from the state?
Sure.
Means you're an entitlement district.
Go ahead, Jed.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harshman, as an entitlement district, we received 10 payments starting in August and ending in May. And to Mr. Farmer's point earlier, our cash flowing, our lien period is over the summer months when we don't receive payments from our local treasurers and we don't receive payments from the state. Our payroll can run anywhere from $5 to $11 million. So we have to be cognizant and make sure that we have the sufficient funds to cover those lien periods in the summer. And again, to Mr. Farmer's point earlier, recapture districts are even in a more precarious position, depending only on the distribution from your county treasurers. Granted, there's the potential change through Senate File 60 that will alter some of the payment taxes of the mineral production on ad valorem. But Mr. Chairman, I tell you that it also raises concerns of what happens when a mineral producer decides to pay that money as opposed to over 15 years more in advance. How will that impact cash reserve calculations? Recapture districts can often get kind of caught in the lurch of those abatements, those notice evaluation changes, and it can cause problems certainly for their cash reserve calculation as well.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you both for, go ahead.
I will not take much time. If somebody could just explain to me, what is an entitlement district? I understand the recapture districts. I'm new on here. I'm just wanting some clarification. What is that? Just define that for me, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, in the state's funding model, the formula creates the school foundation program guarantee, the amount of dollars necessary for education in that district. The first thing that is considered in that guarantee is what is the local resource. So if the local resource is above that, then you are a recapture district and the state recaptures those dollars and then redistributes them elsewhere. If you're below that, you're an entitlement district and the state makes payment to you in order to get you to the guarantee number.
Thank you. Other questions from the
Just
committee?
real quick, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
That's a good question by Representative Nyman. And so how many recapture districts, I mean, that actually produce more wealth than what the model generate or what the model provides? So then the state recaptures that district. We know Campbell County and Sublette. How many recapture districts do we still have now?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that I can give you the exact number. I would say we're somewhere in the ballpark of 4.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions from the committee? Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to testify? Yes, Janine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Janine Baycheski from Teton County, and we just happen to be one of those 4 or 5. And we'll be sending you, we just wrote a check to you for $5 million, and there's another $10 million check coming in the near future. You know, one of the other things that needs to be understood, Mr. Chair, is, and I think you all, many of you know me well enough to know that I really, think sort of like an engineer. And so when you're talking loose numbers, it makes me a little nervous. But when we approve our budget in July, we are really approving an estimated block grant. And so consequently, when people get, well, why didn't you spend all the money you were given? Well, we budget conservatively because we honestly don't know when we're approving our budget in July exactly how much money we're going to get at the end of the day. So I truly appreciate you bringing this forward, Representative Summers, and I thank you.
Questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, Janine. Anyone else in the room would like to testify? Okay, Clarissa, do we have anyone virtually that would like to testify on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have anyone who has raised their hand.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Second.
Moved by Harshman, seconded by Brown. Okay, do you want to walk through the bill step by step? What's your preference?
It's pretty straightforward, Mr. Chairman.
Question on the bill? Well, we got a comment over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment. I will vote in favor of this, and I think that it's really important right now, in particular with the CARES money coming in. There's no two ways about it. But I would like us to delve deeper into issues of reserves and cash flow, perhaps in the interim. We solved one issue maybe 5 or 8 years ago. Maybe we can solve others, but there is a public perception out there that I think needs to be better addressed and better understood. And so I am a yes vote, but I would like us to delve more into this whole issue.
Okay,
Thank you.
good point. Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm probably a no vote on this, but I think that because the money, if I'm understanding this right, if we increase the reserve amounts to 25% from 15%, it means that we will not get those excess funds back in the LSRA account if they are able to save over 15%. And if we have those federal funds to help pad the budgets of these school districts, I think especially if 173 does not pass, it might be nice to have those funds back in the LSRA because we might need those to fulfill our block grant obligations in the future. And if I'm understanding that incorrectly, please correct me. Thank you.
Representative Summers, would you like to respond?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Representative Andrews, I do think you have that incorrectly. Really, I think Mr. Farmer explained it really good. We have our obligation, and then we pass money back out regardless of what happens here. So if we don't have the state resources available, then we eat LISRA up, right? I mean, if the state resources exceed what our revenues are, then we eat LISRA. This is really not going to change any of that. If we were to draft another bill that said, you know, if you can supplant money, then you need to use federal dollars first, state dollars last, that'd be the bill that potentially could save LISRA, but that's not this bill right now.
Okay, follow up? You okay? Anyone else? Okay, are we ready for the question? Question has been called. Let's take the vote, please.
Representative Andrew? Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Connolly? Representative Harshman? Representative Nyman? Representative Obermuller? Representative Summers? Chairman Paxton? 7 ayes, 1 no, and 1 excuse.
Or turn my mic on. If you'd like to come forward, identify yourselves, please.
Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you. It's good to be back in education and see some familiar faces. I miss those faces. So I thank you. And I also welcome Senator Cost, who's my co-sponsor on this. I sent you this morning an email that had just a 1-pager on the Hathaway scholarships. So if you haven't had a chance, it's helpful just to kind of understand what we're talking about. So Mr. Chairman, with your pleasure, I will begin.
Please go ahead.
This bill would allow those students who are so inclined to begin earning Hathaway credits in all subject matter beginning in middle school, pre-9th grade. This is an entirely permissive bill and provides school districts the tool to begin offering those courses if students, parents, and trustees believe that they can make this work within their district. Presently, prior to 9th grade, a Wyoming student can begin earning Hathaway credits in math, foreign language, CTE, and fine arts. This bill expands that opportunity to begin earning Hathaway credits for all coursework pre-9th grade. So let's go through the bill. Page 1, line 12 notes our statute, which is 2116-1307, Success Curriculum Test Standards. We begin amending subparagraph B as noted on line 14. This subparagraph is language specific to success curriculum requirements to qualify for honor or performance scholarship eligibility. Moving on to page 2, Romanet 8, we begin our changes. On line 6, we roll in language arts, which is Romanet 2, and it goes through Romanet 4, which is social studies. This new language excludes Romanet 1, which is mathematics, and electives, which is Romanet 7, as those courses are already allowed pre-9th grade. Moving on to line 16, subparagraph D begins language specific to success curriculum requirements for opportunity scholarship eligibility. Line 22, Romanet 7, is new language, but it simply repeats the same as that of above but for the Opportunity Scholarship. The numerical differences are just that there are no elective offerings for Opportunity. The new language continues on to page 3 through line 6. You'll note that on page 3, line 4, the word may, that may is also found on page 2, line 11, and page 3, line 19, just to reiterate that this is entirely permissive. New language is also found on page 3, beginning with line 15 through line 11, or line 20 rather. This speaks to the Provisional Opportunity Scholarship. And page 4, line 1, section 2 is our effective date. There is no fiscal note, and I stand for any questions.
Senator Cost, would you like to follow up, make any comments on this?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a long time coming, and it's time. It's hardly fair that we can have certain classes that we can teach to the 7th and 8th graders and get credit that can move on with the Hathaway, and yet other courses don't qualify. There's a lot of our kids that are accelerated in their learning process that deserve to get that credit at the age of 7th and 8th grade. Remember one thing that's very important here. That is, the course is not a middle school course. It's the high school course taught at the middle school, or the students could go to the high school to teach it or to learn it, depending on the location of the school and what the district would prefer. But the important part about it is this allows these students, who are probably going to be your highest performers down the road anyway, and they're still going to qualify. So it's not increasing the Hathaway Scholarship. What it's really doing is allowing these kids to get further in their educational process before they graduate, bringing along concurrent enrollment and dual enrollment in the high school years. Concurrent enrollment, I don't know how many of you are aware of or not, that's where a teacher on the high school has been certified to teach the college course at the high school level. That's a wash in income because the school pays the college pays for the teacher at the high school. So basically it's a wash of the money. Dual enrollment is different, where the students are going to the college to take the course. That is more of an expense to the school districts, but I don't know of any school district that has a problem allowing their kids to gain that knowledge. So this allows a lot of students that ability. Not a lot, I got to rephrase that. It allows those kids that are ready at the 7th or 8th grade level to take those courses to move on. It's an opportunity that I really think we need to address, especially with the idea that we're looking at trying to be a little more changing our educational process so that we've got things for our kids, number one, to enhance their desires and their drives, and number two, to meet the needs of these kids at the time when they need them. So with that, I would stand for any questions you may have.
I can certainly see some advantage to especially those advanced kids that would be pretty bored with a lower level course of, say, mathematics. And so I see some real advantages to that. Other comments or questions? Yes, Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Flitner and I chatted about this earlier this morning, and I was saying I could definitely see, Algebra 1, to find out that in fact had already been put in the statute, because that one kind of made sense to me last night when I was reviewing the bill, as well as a first year of foreign language. And the reason being is because they're content-based. What you need to learn in Algebra 1 is very specific, and in your first year of foreign language. When I'm so I started thinking, why were those included and not others? And what I started thinking was, I could read, pretty young, and I'm sure I could read Dostoevsky or Dickens or Toni Morrison, right? I could read the words. There's no two ways about it. But could I understand it? Could I think about it? Could I contemplate it? And there's a big difference between doing that as a 6th or 7th grader than doing it as a 9th or 10th grader. So my concern about opening it up to absolutely every class is just that. Are we going to push down to our middle schools kind of the title of a course and calling it done and finished in order to meet the Hathaway Success Curriculum, when what we really were looking for was the ability to think and comprehend in different kinds of ways than just content. So have you thought about that at all?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is not my world, but I do know my own son who was one of these students. And he certainly would have been able to comprehend anything that was presented to him. And I would suspect that most children, and I think it's probably a small minority that we're speaking about, I think that between them and their parents and their instructors, they would have the ability, I think, to determine whether or not a child would be able to take this coursework.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I am kind of concerned, curious about small schools, and that the way you're talking about it is that it would be an alternative to the existing class, and that then it would count. My concern is that this would become the class, right? This would become the class, and then it would be called kind of meeting English 1 or freshman level English in high school, something like that. That's what concerns me.
Well, and
respond? Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, thank you. What I would prefer to do is to actually let Mr. Zach Ops, who is actually an instructor and teaches this level, I would like to have him speak to your concerns, if you don't mind. He's online, by the way, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'm assuming so. Let's continue with this, and then we'll bring him in here after a bit. I think continue with this line of discussion. Anyone else from the committee? Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Conley, we have to remember that this is a small number, and we have to remember that the standards and the proficiencies and all the students must meet at the high school level is what must be met there. There's not an altering of the course for the middle school student, for the 7th or 8th grade student. I'll push back a little bit. When you start talking Algebra 1, Algebra 2, which are the two that can take there, that's abstract thinking, and they have to think in different ways than just numbers. And therefore, it takes a deeper thought than just somebody that's good with numbers. Likewise with English, in understanding those different philosophical writings and all, I even have trouble sometimes, but we won't talk about that. But the important thing is these kids can meet that. And you're talking about a small number of kids in a small school. It might only be 1 or 2 kids. It might not be any kids one year. The next year, maybe it's a couple of kids. And in a small school where it's K through 12, they're located real close together. They're probably going to just have that student slip up to the high school course. So that would be the remedy for that. In our other schools, if the high school student, or I'm sorry, instructor, no, let me rephrase that. If the middle school instructor is certified in high school teaching, then they can certainly teach course. If they're not, then the school would have to make a decision whether they wanted those kids to go to the high school or not. And this is still something that's a may, so it's optional to the districts to make those decisions. In no way is there an intent to push something down because the kids aren't ready. And I don't think that would happen at all. It hasn't in most of the schools that have it now.
Okay, thank you. And we do have someone joining us virtually. You want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, committee, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Zach Ups. I am a teacher, but just want to clarify that I'm not representing my district today. Instead, I feel that I'm speaking on behalf of some students who actually asked me some questions about the Hathaway Scholarship that I couldn't answer. That led to some research about the legislation behind the scholarship, some discussions with Representative Flittner and Senator Koss, and bring me here in support of this bill today. As Representative Flittner eloquently explained, some of the Hathaway requirements can currently be met at the middle school level in specifically classes, math classes, foreign language, CTE, and fine arts courses. I feel that in light of the growing flexibility in course delivery, that this bill extend this treatment to all subject areas, which I'm in support of. Students have asked me if I learn content, why does it matter when I learned it? And I don't have a good answer for them. So we currently have some students who take high school level courses, and they have proven that they are ready for those courses. They've demonstrated their ability with that content, and they currently aren't receiving Hathaway credit for that. And I believe this would better provide for the wide-ranging interests of our students and the talents that they have. Just to try to clear up some potential misconceptions, I don't read this bill as a mandate for all middle schools to offer high school courses, or all districts for that matter. I don't read this bill that I appreciate your concern, Representative Connolly, that this could certainly lead to middle school courses that are billed as high school courses, but I don't think that's the intent of this bill. These aren't middle school courses dressed up as high school courses, but in fact, the exact same content that would be taught at the high school level. Also, this isn't an effort for every middle schooler to take a full high school curriculum. Certainly, the bulk of middle school students aren't prepared for that, and it would be inappropriate. And so really, also, Representative Connolly, to your question, how would we know that they're prepared? I guess I would ask, how do we know currently that freshmen are prepared for freshman level courses? Typically districts have systems in place to make sure that students have demonstrated proficiency in the standards for the prerequisite courses. And the same would certainly need to be true here. There would need to be something in place at the district level, I feel at the district level anyway, that instructors and the district could determine students' readiness for these high school courses, even though they haven't reached the age of high school, I suppose. I also just want to point, as the bill is currently written, I feel it leaves full local control for school districts to determine whether these opportunities even make sense in their situation, and if so, how they would be delivered. As both Representative Connolly and Senator Koss has mentioned, I think there are a wide variety of ways that the courses could be delivered, including those middle school students attending the high school courses where it geographically makes sense. Thank you for consideration, committee, and Mr. Chairman, I would welcome questions.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Other questions from the committee? And to your point about the timing, I for a long time, we've allowed our high school students to take college credit with college classes. So I fully understand that and appreciate that. Other questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anyone virtually that would like to testify?
Mr. Chairman, just a moment before we lose Mr.
Okay,
Ops.
yes,
I
go
just
ahead.
would like it noted that he is one of the finest instructors that we have in this state, and he has helped to graduate some of the finest citizens out of Park County. So we appreciate everything that he's done for education in Wyoming.
Very good.
On the record, Mr. Chairman, that is a complete exaggeration, but I sure appreciate the compliment.
Well, from my experience, we have an awful lot of really great teachers out there in Wyoming. We're very fortunate. And it looks like this is one of our outstanding stars for sure. We just hope we can retain him, right? We got to keep those teachers working. Okay. Anyone else, Clarissa, that we have waiting in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, we have Miss Eakins. And she has
All
been
right,
in.
go ahead. Sorry, we missed you there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kari Akins, Chief Policy Officer at the Wyoming Department of Education. And the bill sponsors did an excellent job presenting this bill. So I think I'll just add information that because this was already allowed for functionally equivalent courses in middle school to count in certain content areas, we do already have this provision incorporated into our Chapter 38 rules on the Hathaway Scholarship program. And just to clarify, when we're talking about a functionally equivalent course, that is defined in Section 2 of those rules, subparagraph N. And functional equivalent means a course approved by the Wyoming Department of Education that addresses the same content standards and substantial components of a named course within the Success curriculum. So a course could not be watered down to the middle school level and still count for the Hathaway Success curriculum were this bill to pass. It would have to teach the same content standards that are required by the curriculum, which are grade 9 through 12 content standards. And Mr. Chairman, if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Any questions from the committee? You do have a question? No, you're okay. All right. Anyone else have a question on the committee? Thank you, Kari. Clarissa, do we have anyone else in the waiting room virtually that would like to testify on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have anyone else on Zoom.
Okay, anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this? Rob, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
With Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education. I serve as the public policy chairman. We support this proposed bill for a number of reasons. This maximizes facilities and equipment usage. To an example that was spoken about earlier, if we have one facility where we have middle school students and high school students as well, and say an 8th grader would like to take a welding class and we have an opening in there with the same curriculum, that's another opportunity as well there, provided it's the same curriculum. So this is important for us because we turn away so many students that request CTE courses. So getting them started earlier will increase the level that they progress through their program of study. In some of our larger districts, we're turning away between 1,500 and 2,000 course requests. So we kind of look at that as a pyramid with our entry-level classes at the bottom and gradually moving toward the top of the pyramid. This would widen the base and allow us to create more completers in a program of study. We do have precedence with our 8th grade foreign language is a very common class that they take. And to be honest, a lot of our CT coursework at the 8th grade level is very consistent with our entry-level coursework at the college. So I don't think it's a huge leap in content or performance aptitude for students. So just briefly wanted to support this bill from our organization and happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions from Mr. Hill? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else like to testify? Anyone else? Okay, public testimony is over. What's your pleasure?
Second.
Moved by Harshman, seconded by Brown. Okay. Committee. Any further comments or questions on the bill as we move through it? You want to go through it page by page or? Representative Conley.
Yeah, just thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to those who answered my questions very thoroughly. I'm convinced.
All right, do you want to walk through it page by page or are you good the way we are? Question's been called on the bill. Take the vote, please.
Representative Andrew? Aye. Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Connolly? Representative Harshman? Representative Nyman?
Aye.
Representative Obermuller?
Aye.
Representative Summers?
Aye.
Chairman Paxton?
Aye.
That's 8 ayes and 1 excused.
Okay, bill is passed. It looks like we have, we're so efficient today, we've actually gotten to our 4th bill. So next bill on our agenda is House Bill 152. The bringer of the bill is Representative Summers. And if you'd like to go ahead with this, and Senator Cost, I see you're also a signator on this. So if you'd like to join us up here, that'd be good too.
Mr. Chairman, I think he just wants to be a representative, not a senator.
Yeah, I think we'd take him any day. Anyway.
Sponsor request the wrong guy.
Okay, Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I bring you House Bill 152, Hathaway eligibility requirements, and ask for your favorable consideration. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to suggest this is a simple bill, but it's a revolution, frankly. And the revolution is against the current Hathaway success curriculum. And the fact that it has driven education in the state of Wyoming since it was implemented. And I think that may be all good and fine in large districts, but in small districts, it becomes tougher and tougher to provide that success curriculum as resources shrink. And so what this bill does, it's pretty simple. It moves and I just want to really appreciate.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? For our new members, may not be familiar with the Hathaway Scholarship. Do you want to go through the different Hathaway scholarships as we go, just quickly?
Yeah.
And see so where this one fits in for us.
So actually, Mr. Chairman, this is for all levels of the Hathaway.
Okay.
It's honor through provisional, but we really have a really good tool thanks to Representative Flitner. So if you pull out your little sheet right here, and if you look under provisional, for example, it is so let me finish what my bill does and then I'll go to this.
Okay, that sounds good.
So Mr. Chairman, basically what this bill does is it moves the Hathaway, it gets rid of makes the Hathaway success curriculum the high school graduation requirements for the state, the district, and then any standards that need to be completed. So really, if you go to the very last page of the bill, I think the very last page, second to the last page of the bill, it basically, the success curriculum would be the curriculum required for high school graduation pursuant to state law, the standards for graduation adopted by the state board, and the standards for graduation adopted by the applicable school district. And so, Mr. Chairman, the problem I'm trying to solve is the fact as resources get squished, it becomes harder and harder for districts, especially small districts, to be able to provide that Hathaway success curriculum. And so what is that? And that's where you can go to your sheet and you can see on the left is the highest Hathaway, which is the honors. On the right is the provisional. And so for the provisional, you can see that for the most part, not completely, but for the most part, it's that high school graduation requirements with the exception of math. When you get into the other three, the opportunity, performance, and honors, then you end up with more coursework that is required, 4 years of math, 4 years of science, 4 years of either a foreign language, CTE, or fine arts. Fine and performing arts is actually the FPA piece. And so, Mr. Chairman, in the bill, just one note in the bill, when you see on page 2 that where career technical education, arts and music are stricken, it's just conforming language because they're no longer a requirement of the success curriculum that was developed and put into statute. If they were part of the high school graduation requirements, then they would still apply. And so really that's it, Mr. Chairman. It is a revolution. This is not a small potatoes bill. It is I've ran this before and taken it to the floor and not run it. But I think it's time we have this conversation again.
Okay, we're going to allow you to weigh in on this too, Senator, before we go to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Summers is right. It's time for putting some flexibility into what our students have as opportunities and all. When this program was originally created, I was on the group that was trying to come up with the qualifications and all. And I kept asking, why can't we allow some of these other things that will allow skilled trades and that be more an emphasis as well? Unfortunately, and I say it carefully because I do not mean to cut anything about our four-year schools in any way, shape, or form, the Hathaway was really driven by 4 years of college. And that was the focus. And if you look at a lot of our school districts around the state in their website, when you go to the Hathaway, the first thing you see is the highest level of the scholarship. There's nothing wrong with the highest level of the scholarship, but a lot of our kids need to be able to see those others and need to open up the avenues that they can succeed there. The other thing that's really important, and I'm sure the gentleman that sits behind me to the left a little bit is probably smiling about it quite a bit, because this opportunity will provide flexibility in some of our courses that our kids are forced to take other courses for right now. 4 years of math, 4 years of science, 4 years of English, and basically you end up with about 4 years of history when you're done too. Plus you have CTE can be 1 or 2 credits. Foreign language can be 2 credits, but they must be sequential if you're taking the highest level. What this doesn't do is waters down the Hathaway. And the reason for that is you still have the GPA and you still have the ACT scores to drive what level you're going to get at. So this is not watering down the expectations. This is not saying that people can get 4 years to go to a community college to work on skill-based. This is saying that you're still going to have to perform within the level of expectation to be able to meet that college level. But now what it will do is give some of those kids an insight into some opportunities that they don't see right now. So this really does help to open the door for those students that are the certified or the AA kids at our different schools. If you look at the Hathaway data, and I apologize I didn't get it to you in time. If you look at the Hathaway data, it's a little disturbing because we don't even come to 50% of our kids using the Hathaway. In fact, in most of our places, we're down around 30 to 33%. I don't think that was the desire of it. When you look at the success of a lot of those kids, it's a little annoying to us because it's not quite as, well, let me rephrase that. It's really not as good as you'd like to see it. A lot of that, if you look, I've had them break down the 4 levels of the Hathaway so we could kind of understand. A lot of the kids that probably should have looked at the lower levels that would give them the opportunity to get the skill base and all have kind of been pushed into that higher level. And therefore, after a year or maybe not even a year, they end up dropping out or failing out and they're not successful anymore. That data is there and supported very well. So this would give those kids that opportunity to reach where they see their dream come true. You know, we put down our career in technical education too much. Somebody wants to be a welder, or somebody wants to be a carpenter, or somebody wants to be a plumber, electrician. It's just not viewed upon the way that you need 4 years of college. That's not right. And those people can make excellent money. And if it's what keeps them happy, you know, happiness is a whole lot more important than money. If they can get into something they really enjoy, I think that's really critical. So this bill really does meet that. I know it's a jump in a direction that some of us get nervous about, but I think it's time to get nervous. It's time to look at flexibility in our students and the ability for them to be able to choose the subjects in the areas that are going to best meet their needs. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think we had Representative Brown first, and then we'll go back to you, Representative Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for either bringer of the bill. And I think I understand it as I'm looking at this. If I look at this sheet, basically what I do is I take this box here and I move it across the board. And the only thing that's separating that we're going to be looking at from this point forward are these 2 categories. Am I understanding that correctly? That we're, like you say, this is a simple bill with monumental changes to the way the Hathaway Scholarship is done. It seems to me that we're looking strictly at an ACT score and a GPA. So I just would like that clarified if I could, please, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. But what you have to understand is if you intend as a student and a parent of a student intends to be on the honors track, then you will probably push for that coursework that you think will get you that ACT score. But what we've done is we've tried to put all kids, we've tried to fit, you know, the round peg in a square hole or the square peg in a round hole. And we've tried to push all kids to the honors and really the success curriculum. And I've heard this conversation, well, you know, the success curriculum, it's really broad and it's good for every child from A to Z. Well, it's not. And kids fall through the cracks. So yes, to a degree, you're right as far as the curriculum piece of it, but there are other backstops on what suffices.
Senator Cost, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown. You know, I'll push back a little bit. You're right, because it's the minimum graduation requirements by the districts, which really encompasses the state board as well as the requirements from the state. But for those students that are wishing to get higher ACT scores, it's going to be well understood that they've got to proceed, if I can speak, into those higher level courses. And your kids that we just talked about for the 7th and 8th grade, they're going to be in those courses. The students that are going to be in these courses are skilled and are kids that have a desire to do something different than 4 years of school. And I don't think it's important, or I don't think it's critical that we try to force them into those upper level courses when that's not what's going to be efficient for them.
Okay, follow up.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I guess as you're saying that, my brain is turning and I'm thinking to myself, the kids who are going to be wanting to go to that honors level are going to be taking those higher level courses. And you would hope that they grasp those levels at those higher level courses and they ace those courses. But realistically, they could be taking those courses and be average and get a C. And they could get that. And when they get that average and they get that C, now we're looking solely at a GPA on this, and they could be sitting up there and we could be knocking them down on a GPA level on this and pulling them back. Am I right on that?
Go ahead, Senator.
Their GPA would be there, but their ACT would not. And that's where it changes. That changes the whole ballpark.
I think I saw another hand up. Yes, Representative Colley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I just took a quick look at the Chapter 31 rules to make sure that I understood what was the current graduation requirements. So the differences that I see, and just correct me if I'm wrong here, is that the language arts requirement for the Hathaway is the same as the Chapter 31, 4 years. The math requirement for the Hathaway is 4 years. For graduation, it's 3. So there's one math course difference. Social studies is 3 years for both, so no difference there. Science is 4 years for the Hathaway, 3 years for graduation, so 1 there. The big difference is in the FBA, CTE, or FL. That's where the big difference is, where there's none in Chapter 31. There's 0. And so there would no longer be the requirement of any of those. And so it would be then, so we've got 2 course difference, 1 math and 1, what was it, science, 1 math and 1 science. And then it would leave it up to the districts for everything else, often what we call electives. Do I have that correct in terms of what that difference is?
Go ahead, Senator.
That's my first question, then I have a second.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Conley, you have that correct, but the districts have the number of electives needed to be able to meet that up. So that's going to come out to a total, if I remember correctly, it's around 16 or 17 credits for that, 13, somewhere in there.
Right, and then
so the rest of them to get to the 24 or 27, depending on whatever district it is, because each district has a difference there of what they require, are the electives and all that meet that.
Okay. So I'll follow up, Mr. Chairman, on that one
Go
with a
ahead.
very different question. So it is possible that a district could choose, for example, to if there's no longer a Hathaway Success Curriculum, a district could choose to get rid of foreign language or CTE or whatever the other one is, fine and performing arts, right? We don't expect them to do that, but it would be possible for that to happen.
Representative Summers wants this one. He's just begging to get it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think if you look at our basket of goods and what we require to be taught, it includes all of those things. So we require districts to teach all of those things under the basket of goods, under the educational program, to provide that. Not everybody has to take it. But what we have done by doing this is in order to try to get CTE into this mix, we have piled on to the point that it just becomes incredibly difficult for students and some districts. And so this actually frees it up. These districts still have to provide this coursework. It's just, does a child have the right to choose his direction in life and still maybe get a chance at a scholarship?
Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think a couple of issues. I appreciate my good friend from Sublet. And I think the first one obviously is, every district has a different graduation requirement. Some require 4 or 5 more credits to graduate than others. And so then you start changing this. But I think the fundamental question is, what is the Hathaway? And it's supposed to be a merit scholarship. And I'll just tell you, when we were doing this work, when we brought this to the legislature and we did the work in the 2005 interim, we got to the very end of it and we almost said, maybe we shouldn't do it, because we looked at all these other states and each one of them invariably kept amending and amending and amending because this doesn't fit my son, or this doesn't fit my daughter or my school. And pretty soon it becomes an entitlement. And I know, hey, I say it, the ACT is the gatekeeper. I get it. And so I've been through all these battles of this, but I'll just tell you, the first revolution was the Hathaway. Because remember back then, our kids didn't know enough math and science. That was it. That was the big push behind this. And that's what the Hathaway was. It was an extra math and science. And it wasn't top shelf math. I mean, it's algebra 1, 2, and geometry in one other course. And same with science, we now allow computer science. So we started the revolution was math and science. And then on the last vote, on the last day, Marta Struck was appointed by Governor Freudenthal on the committee, and Lord rest her soul. And she was an advocate for foreign language, and it was in and it was out, depending on the meeting, the final meeting. And I was chairing the committee and I looked at her and I just could not say no to her. And I cast a deciding vote to put foreign language in it. And so here we are. That was the revolution. Math, science, and a foreign language. So now the evolution has been, it's not foreign language anymore. It's fine and performing arts. So if you like to play a musical instrument or sing or be in the theater, you can do that all through high school. Or if you want to go build stuff, make sawdust, burn metal, you can do that all through high school. You don't have to do that piece. And so it's fine and performing and foreign language. We even include sign language. And you can start doing them in junior high. And science, the evolution has been now computer science. And then, with math courses, it's pretty wide open. And I think some are financial literacy, some are others. And so I think, again, I think we got to be really careful and to say, if this isn't a merit scholarship anymore, then let's just call it that. And it's a graduation scholarship. And I think the part that was brought up, and Representative Conley, yeah, you might have a content standard saying you have to have CTE. That's not a lot. That doesn't mean you have wood shop welding and ag classes and all that. You don't have to have that. And I tell you, those will be that, and fine and performing arts will be the first ones watered down. And because you just won't have to take it. And so then I think you're going to create this thing where my school district likes 26 credits to graduate. Some others have 22. And I just think we're going to get into a problem. And so I like what you're saying. I understand the pressures, but I think we can work on that from the funding model perspective. But I also think we can continue to evolve this program. Like the bill we just passed is an evolution. And the problem with revolution, sometimes it doesn't work out the way you think it's going to. You never know whose head's going to be on the stick at the end. And so Smartest guy in the room right here, really. And I've taken a year or two of his life when I served as speaker. And Lord rest his soul on that. And I'll never be able to repay him for all the good he's done for Wyoming. But I'm not on this bill for you, and I apologize, but I'm just going to vote no. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, before we go too far on this, we probably should bring in the State Department of Education and let them comment. So if someone from the State Department is online, Clarissa, let's bring them in.
Mr. Chairman, I have admitted Kari.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back. Kari, would you like to comment?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Kari Akins, Chief Policy Officer at the Wyoming Department of Education. There's already been very in-depth and wide-ranging discussion. Don't know that I have much to add, but certainly happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Questions for the committee? Yes, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carrie, could you give me just kind of some background? What percent of the students that receive the Hathaway actually graduate, use it, go to fruition and graduate under the Hathaway program?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nyman, I can try to pull that data up real quick, but I do not have it up in front of me right now, and I would hate to give you the wrong number.
Okay, let's see if anyone else has a question before we're waiting for her to pick that up. Anyone else on the committee have any questions for Kari? All right, Kari, were you able to find that?
Moving as fast as I can, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. You sing for us, Albert.
Mr. Chairman, still trying to make sure I'm getting the latest year, but it seems to be just under half based on kind of the average over the years.
Okay, Representative Nyman, does that sort of answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That does. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just say I will email this to the committee once I have the exact number.
Okay, that'd be great. Other questions for Kari before we move on? Okay, I think we'll open it up to testimony for anyone who's in the room would like to, yes, Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious if there's anyone from the community colleges or UW. I have a question for them, actually.
Okay, is there anyone online from the community colleges or in the room that would like to testify?
Mr. Chairman, I do not see anyone online who has their hand raised.
Okay, well, then let's go to testimony from within the room. Mr. Hill, are you up again? Okay, thank you.
Committee, Rob Hill with the Wyoming Association of Concurrent Technical Education. If I could please preface any comments by first thanking you for all the support that we've had for CTE from the legislature and certainly the House Education Committee. And we feel enormous gratitude for your support, and our students are grateful too. As many of you recall, 2 years ago, we reworked the Hathaway Success Curriculum, and we had considerable discussion about it. And we, along with our business and industry partners and our students, really believed in the capacity and the capability of our students And we didn't want to compromise the success curriculum as Representative Harshman spoke about. We had metrics of that were high bar, ACT scores and GPA, and a number of studies were conducted, and our students that when we compared them with all others were actually completing and excelling at a higher level. So we didn't want to compromise or put them in a position where their expected outcomes were lower than somebody else's. I can tell you as a teacher on a daily basis that since the inception of the new rules, I see higher quality students working in the current technical education classes. So we look at our CTE students as a cross-section of our school, and we wanted to provide access to all of them. We've had a lot of success with creating this flexible and equitable system here and still maintaining these high bars. We do respect local control. We certainly have great schools throughout the school that emphasize CTE. A possible concern here is if we lower the credit requirement, are we going to be able to get our students to these advanced courses that business and industry is expecting as students enter the workforce? And that's an unknown to us in that regard. So we would love to see more opportunity for them, but we have some concerns that maybe we won't see as many completers if they're under that current system there. So a possible solution on this may be to apply the intent on this proposed bill to the opportunity and provisional levels while still maintaining the honors and performance levels. So just wanted to provide a possible solution and speak on behalf of the career and technical education community. I'd be happy to stand for any other questions as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hill. Questions from the committee? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anyone else in the room like to testify? Janine, please come forward. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Janine Bayteski from Teton County. Frankly, we don't have an opinion one way or the other. I just want to remind the committee of the responsibility that we have as a board of trustees. And our responsibility as a board of trustees is to set those graduation requirements in our community based on the needs within our community. Consequently, for example, we require 4 years of math, 4 years of science, but that's our choice. The interesting thing that I have seen over time is, I'll say, the need to petition the state or solicit the state for what does a class count for? And what I'm meaning by that is, for example, when we started our Project Lead the Way program, I was heartbroken that my child wouldn't take any of the classes, but she didn't feel she needed CTE classes. So now, you know, we've sort of finessed the system so that you can either get math credit or CTE credit. So that's sort of the other side of what happens in this arena, is that the courses that, some of the courses that are sort of on the line, I'll say, we basically ask the Department of Ed to be able to count them in one category or another. But, so I thank you.
Questions for Janine? Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room like to testify? Clarissa, do we have anyone with their hand up virtually?
Mr. Chairman, Kari has raised her hand again.
Okay, bring her back in, please. Kari, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let the committee know that I did find the exact numbers regarding the Hathaway Scholarship. And it is about, after 6 years, 45% of Hathaway Scholarship recipients have received either a certificate, associate's degree, or bachelor's degree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Okay. Okay, quick comment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I appreciate the good debate. And it's, it's really become where the tail's wagging the dog on this thing. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I've got a small district in my area, and as resources have got tighter, they are honestly concerned about the fact of whether they are going to be able to provide the success curriculum. I'm just telling you straight up.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I recognize that, especially sitting on this committee. And it's funny because I've sat on this committee now for 5 years, and I was telling Representative Connolly, I think I have seen at least 3 Hathaway bills come through this committee every year, amending requirements, changing this, changing that. And it just, I'm surprised it took us this late to see the first 2. But that being said, I recognize the plight of what's being done here to some of our school districts, but I would direct your attention to this bill, the language that we're striking on this bill. It says that a superintendent of a district can actually certify that this school district doesn't have these programs and can submit that to the Department of Education and say, I cannot offer this, and they can still be offered the success curriculum upon that. So I feel like we've adapted to that. I feel like the small school districts have spoken, and we've certainly given that opportunity available there. So I'm really, really concerned about I feel like we're relaxing this too much. I understand what the bringers are trying to do, but I feel like we're relaxing this scholarship too much. And honestly, Mr. Chairman, as a graduating member of the class of 2005, I feel a little slighted that you guys didn't figure this out a year before I graduated high school. So
Other questions or comments from the committee? Well, sensing that you're ready to vote. Question has been called. Diane, will you take
Okay.
the vote, please?
Representative Andrew? Aye. Representative Brown?
No.
What was that? I'm sorry. No. Representative Connolly? No. Representative Harshman?
No.
Representative Nyman?
Aye.
Representative Newsom?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
No.
Representative Summers?
Aye.
Chairman Paxton?
Aye.
5 ayes and 4 noes.
Live to fight another day.
What's the chances of that coming up in general file?
Well, I'd like to congratulate the committee for a very efficient day today. Appreciate the fact that we managed to cover 4 bills. That's probably a record for this committee for sure. So thank you for your efficiency. With that, the meeting is adjourned.